out to help connect with placemakers and place need people who need that type of technical assistance from a placemaker. Oh, another one is the Small Business Administration. So they're meeting with every business in America, and they're very easy to plug into and let all their consultants know that this is a deeper resource that they could work with on site management, because they often help with like lease assistance or build out or this or that. So there's all these networks that you could tap this into, but this has to make sense. It's just kind of sort of a ball of energy and taking structure in some kind of crystalline way at this point. One of the things I wanted to point out was one of the signups we got was from, and I think Ethan, you might be able to, you know more about this person maybe, but a very high-end landscape architecture firm. And they said in the questionnaire that they wanted to get involved in their own community, which had Black-owned business and Black-owned street and culture. So I called them. I wasn't able to connect with them yet, but I think that's really interesting to reach out to a national organization to connect with your own backyard. And so what I heard too in Lakeman, in City Repairs Village Build course the other night, was the number one reason people don't get involved is because they weren't asked. And so there's this chicken and the egg piece of this, in that we have to ask people and then provide them with some sort of support to get engaged and involved. And then what I see happening down the line is, as you saw in like the NACTO document on street patterns, that there's patterns and types and things that are emerging in models that we can then present and share more readily and more quickly as we work through iteration. So that's my big spiel, and I'd love some reaction from you guys so we can iterate through this process to provide something of value really at all levels, from placemaker to place to everything.
Yeah. I mean, I can share a few quick thoughts. I mean, just, I both have sort of some big picture ideas on how this is a great step and an opportunistic step for a much larger direction that we want to go in and is needed. I mean, right now the way that projects are decided on, we don't decide projects around places first. We decide them around one discipline or solution set or one department, and then there's these big competitive processes that force people to come up with a solution, or before really any community process or anything, or not design competitions and those sorts of things. And I've always thought we need to create a system like this that could help communities draw on the best expertise locally, globally, for a range of different issues, and in a way put together the teams, but also make sure they're focusing on the process and the local capacity building, and drawing on people at the right times locally and externally. So in a way, this is a great time. This is a great simple way to start experimenting with that direction. But I agree. I think the limiting factor, as you've discussed, for getting these short-term changes to happen, and we have a short window to get them to happen, is the capacity of sort of placemaking expertise. And Rebecca, was realizing the same thing at the same time, of the demand and the need to understand the potential for how we can change our communities pretty quickly right now. So we need to, the whole sort of approach of placemaking X is that, we need a lot more expertise from all different placemaking. Requires the skills of many different experts and disciplines, and we need to be scaling it, at every scale. And there's placemaking expertise in every community, but we all have a lot to learn from each other, and we need to more fluidly collaborate. So this is a perfect model to do that. And let's start simple, like we have it, but also think about how it can be built upon and iterate as we go. Other thoughts?
Go ahead. Yeah, and then I'm just thinking how we can help. And then from Placemaking X side, one thing that could tie in well is that we're starting to look at creating kind of a case studies database or database of resources, and we're still figuring out how to do that and what to do. But a lot of what we want to do is connect the dots and connect the cool actions that are happening, kind of what's happening at Porch Placemaking Week, but trying to really kind of show the story of what's happening. And I think there's different initiatives like or campaigns like this, which is like the perfect way to start framing some of these campaigns. And if we can kind of really highlight it and make it feel real and important, and as case studies and as examples, then it can kind of drive more energy. And that's just where I feel like I could help a lot, having kind of created the whole Placemaking X website and brand. And how can we continue to create that base to provide resources and ideas for other people.
Cool. And Rebecca, how do you think this connects with like what you're thinking? Because you're coming at this maybe from a whole other angle, or I'm not sure.
Sorry, I'm muted. Some different angles and a lot of overlap. I think one of the ideas that excites me the most is along the lines of what Josh is talking about. I love that you created this model for one business and we're able to share that with another one that could then pick it up and use it. And I think that's often as simple as it is, just giving somebody a look at what this can actually look like in a sense of how they could then translate that into their own space. I don't know how different this is in our rural towns compared to cities, but around here, there would still be a huge block with people saying, but where do I get that ground covering? And where on earth can I get the tables? And how do I even approach this? So I think as much as we can share the patterns and the how-tos and the material lists with links of where to order things and exactly how it's done, that would certainly help our smaller towns and people who are not in this world and don't have connections to practitioners. That's part of what led us to think about trying to coordinate a statewide effort of supporting towns at the same time, particularly so that we could look at some bulk purchasing or procurement and really help take that piece of the puzzle away for communities. I think around here, especially, even if they know exactly what to do, right now, the communities and certainly the businesses don't have money to go get this stuff, and they don't have time to figure out or shop around where to get the supplies. So that's one piece of it. The other piece, I think, where maybe we're a little bit different is I've really been seeing the need to take more of a comprehensive look at a small town. And again, this is where it's a little bit different than a citywide approach. Like business by business makes tons of sense in a larger place. So many of our towns are so small that it makes sense to look at our little one block main streets comprehensively and say, okay, where does it make sense to put some outdoor seating that all 2 of our restaurants can use or anybody who happens to show up downtown? And among this little area, where should we have hand washing stations and where should we have an information board? We're just not big enough to need to be handling this on a case by case basis. And it doesn't make as much sense to do it business by business. It might in a place like Burlington, but not in the little tiny towns I'm working with. So that interests me. And of course, because I'm first and foremost more of a process and engagement person and designer second, I come at it from the process perspective too and think about, right, how can we use this moment as a chance to really engage people, get them involved in this conversation about what they want to see in the downtown, what would bring them back out, what would make them feel safe, and then go do it. We're just hearing so much about the need for pride and a sense that communities are moving forward and they actually have some agency over this moment, that I'm really intrigued by trying to figure out a way to safely engage a lot of people in doing this kind of makeover together, as opposed to, again, it just being an individual thing. But I think there's tons of overlap.
Yeah. I think Madeline is joining us in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I was a little bit late.
Oh, now we can't.
No,
I can hear you.
you can. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we hear you,
Yeah.
but we can't
Yep.
see you. Whoop.
Ryan,
Yes.
what something interesting I just wanted, I don't know where you're at specifically at the moment, but we just got a email from a union organizer asking if they could help businesses in the downtown reboard or rebuild, either do some rebuilding or else help them with the boards that they have. And I just thought that was interesting because of your concept about having the boards remade by this into other, using them for other things. So I just wanted to mention that because it's a whole union that wants to help.
Wow. So that reminds me of an idea. One of the sort of ideas that Placemaking was started with was we threw around this idea to have a place corps, like the next Peace Corps would be people, providing ways that people could support communities anywhere, their community or some others, essentially as placemakers. And we developed some big proposal for it. We have to dig up. But this could be a way to test and build capacity for a bigger proposal that we could get foundations or the government behind to, work, could be to rebuild America, but other parts of the world too.
So another model that I think we maybe all know about is the Community Design Center in Baltimore. So basically, like, imagine there's a group of kids that want to design their playground. They can come and sit with the right group of professionals for an hour and get the illustration done, or the budgeting thought out, or look at the street map and say, maybe that's a much more dangerous place to do it than what about right here behind the thing, and unleashing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the idea, is to connect as deeply as possible, especially to places that are getting no consideration. So right now, I mean, even my downtown, to have the restaurants out, we're on the way advance of the curve. Other cities are still trying to figure that out, but they're not talking to community about creating outdoor public amenity for community's sake. And so that's where I think placemakers can stimulate the conversation and provide support. So, for example, a city council person contacted, somebody, and they connected them with me, and she was having trouble with staff comprehending moving some of these things forward. So the fact that she could connect them with us, we could provide resources. It gave staff the ability then to adopt leniency rules that now allows that framework to happen in that community. So there's different roadblocks in different communities. I've talked to people in rural, and like, it's a different landscape, like you said. It's a different landscape in low income. It's a different landscape in Laguna Beach, it's just like a wealthy seaside town in Los Angeles. They're doing, like you said, Rebecca, where when you have enough businesses closed on a smaller scale, it makes more sense to collaboratively do it. Or in West Palm Beach, where the infrastructure was all built out by the development, the DDA, but they have downtown residents. So we're definitely seeing different approaches based on all that. But I don't feel like people are being very ambitious. Like, for example, I talked to the California Food Council, which is 23 counties in California who've been pushing food advocacy. And I said, all of you should go in and put a permit to have a market stand at First and Main. So the food movement could make a very aggressive, like, rook move for the queen, basically, and put a market stand at the best primest real estate in town, in every town in California, and get that not only approved, but probably directed towards recovery funds and permanent infrastructure. So no one's thinking about this really, like, strategically and forward, as a forward move. Because what I saw happen was, we had a barrier called, the city didn't want to put up a single parklet for 6 years. And then all of a sudden we got 8 done in a week, and they're telling me they wanted to put recovery funds into it. So that tells me that everyone needs to be really aggressive, use this time for lighter, quicker, cheaper experimentation, with the expectation and hope that temporary becomes permanent with recovery funds attached. Because what politicians are doing is they're lining up to disperse recovery funds, and they're coming up with pet projects and acronyms, and I'm seeing the whole soup of diversionary efforts. Whereas we want recovery funds to go to this organizing and to any infrastructure costs, and maybe even paying communities of color to do these projects. I don't know, but it seems like a better positioning than what I'm seeing proposed. Like, let's spend millions of dollars to get a phone number so that people can call this phone number and it will tell them where they can get food, when all the nonprofits around food access already self-organized, and the government was non-effective at creating a front door for food access. The community groups and nonprofit sector completely self-managed it, and now the city wants to direct money to itself to pay themselves to set up a front door that they didn't set up and won't set up and could never probably be effective, versus funding the advancement of the local food ecology, or whatever, local place ecology.
Sun right down there.
And I wanted to show you guys this, because this to me is like this is it right here. So this is the Wikipedia page for Robert Moses, everybody's best friend. So it says, shortly after FDR in 1933, federal government found itself with millions of New Deal dollars to spend. Yet states and cities have had few projects ready. Moses was one of the few local officials who had projects shovel ready. For that reason, New York City was able to obtain significant Works Progress Administration, Civilian Conservation Corps, and other Depression-era funding. So, which built all of the roads, bridges, playgrounds, parks, and housing projects, and the most influential builder of all time. So this is exactly what's happening right now. Is the federal government flooded counties, cities, states with recovery funds to be utilized. No one has any programs, so they're cooking them up, and they're horrible. They're the usual, like, what is this? It doesn't work to give money that way. Like, for example, all my restaurants are trying to hire back their staff, and their staff won't come back because they're getting better unemployment than to work. So these programs, the lower they're executed on the totem pole, the better they are. So what I see is, like, we need 1 million tiny Moseses with little Moses money, not big Moses money, to basically do what he did with New York and the WPA and suck all those recovery funds into that built environment.
No question. Yeah. So we need to facilitate communities. You know, we have the declarations. We need then the lighter, quicker, cheaper plans. And the longer term visions. You know, for their public realm, and to reinvent themselves with the public realm out. Make sure they're supporting the businesses that are most attached to their community, to places that give back to places that create that money, get that money circulating quickly in the community first. And then attract people, as people are thinking about where they live right now and where they invest, they're a little more mobile right now at the moment than other times. So this is all the more important time to focus on place attachment, belonging, how welcoming communities are.
So I'm wondering, Ryan, how do we start? I mean, I already know you've set this up. People are already starting to write in. So what's the first step here of making sure that we're able to connect what is coming in now, and then in that process it can be built out? I'm not sure. I did hear something about I don't know who all the people are, I'm sorry, but that someone had a funding strategy idea, or they have the ability to create that. I heard Ethan say something about this, the image of this is similar to almost like an internal, like, Peace Corps, but building like a placemate core. That's awesome. And then, like, I'm just curious, like, so how do we begin? It seems like a matchmaking project right now to me.
Yes, it's ultimately a matchmaking project between placemakers and community-based groups. Like Ethan said, there could be that there's a part where there's a declaration, then lighter, quicker, cheaper, then they come up with shovel-ready projects, basically, and they're supported through that process. What my question is, because right now there's what do you call it, like it basically works right now. It's on the internet, it works. The lighter, quicker, cheaper is up there right now. So I want to iterate through improving that, how it's framed, what the messaging is. What I'm giving you there's a lot of information and ways to frame this, but what's the top level messaging? Because like I sat with the placemaker, explain it, they say, yes, sign me up. But they maybe not stumble upon this or think to do this and sign themselves up. So there might be a clearer way to reach placemakers. On the same way, there definitely has to be a very clear path to community-based groups. And so the one that I know is to go through electeds, grantee cohorts, and other like place-based associations that I'm in that touch those type of communities and make this offer to them. I was on a Zoom call with them. They typically can provide their own translation because they're already going through the same type of organizing via Zoom that we are. They already have residents organized in that sense. They have a call-in number. They have the translator. They just need to plug in that they're not going to know what Better Block is. They're not going to know what parklets.org is. They're not going to know the NACTO models for street topography. They're not going to know how to run a mural app session. Those type of things could be a game changer for a community. I don't think it makes sense for us to come in and mastermind projects or take serious ownership of our projects, but just provide a pinch of sugar. That's what it is. It's like that critical little pinch of sugar when they need a placemaker in a pinch, whatever the heck it is. But that's kind of the idea here, because I want to take advantage of this moment, in that I do feel that if people do make moves in their communities, those are likely going to become permanent. And furthermore, there's also a lot of city ecologies where they need the support to be able to open up the key to this new universe that some of us are getting to play in. So those are my objectives.
So I have some ideas. Well, except the first image just came into my mind when you said pinch of sugar is you as the Mary Poppins of placemaking. Ryan coming in on his umbrella. So, but I think what we actually should be doing is offering training and tools to placemakers to do this, because we're all trying to figure this out a little bit, and then training to communities on how to, not just get a placemaker, but actually like how to organize in your community, and what can you do without a placemaker? How do you get ready for a placemaker? How do you find the placemaking skills that are already in your community? Train them to start to be good partners, clients, collaborators with each other and with placemakers. So I think, the simple version of that, I think we start to develop resources and maybe develop a toolkit or guidebook, but the simple version is just, again, the way we've been doing this, we do another webinar and we start to develop this idea with a core team of placemakers that want to shape it. But we do it in a sort of a public way that we're, that sort of keeps launching this idea further and helps get the body of knowledge and skills that's needed to actually implement this. Okay.
Right.
I did just watch Mary Poppins, the new one. But yeah. So what do you think? I mean, just how do we riff on that idea a little bit? What would be a next? If the role of placemaking US is to do convenings, trainings to the placemakers to be able to do this, and then provide the trainings to the communities to do the, and we just schedule one out a couple of weeks away and figure out who the right people are to sort of do a little bit of a training, and then out of that we come up with next steps to develop better resources and tools and trainings.
Ethan, is there already a toolbox in Placemaking X, or like, do you guys have a place that people could access a series of tools now?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's a good question. Josh and I have been talking about sort of posting all the placemaking toolkits that have been done. And there's some that are done for different parts of the world. In some ways there's not that many. In some ways there's dozens and dozens if we dig, and they're not as relevant. But and then there's case studies. So on the PPS website, we created databases of great places, and then databases of later, quicker, cheaper projects. Yeah, will have some relevance to today, but then now there's a whole nother set of tools and solutions that are emerging post-COVID. So that's I think that's what the focus on with the webinar would be. And the Streeteries webinar was the first one of that, but then I think there's probably more to add to that beyond just we talked about other solutions beyond just restaurants, which we did discuss on that call, but we could more launch this idea. It'd be a promotion for the service that Ryan's set up, and it would start to get more interest and get more placemakers to sign up to be part of that.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I mean, we definitely want to start organizing some of some of those existing resources that are out there, but there is also conversation and in creating a toolkit and start crowdsourcing more case studies within, at least within the Placemaking X site. And the toolkit, we're looking at sort of different options, but the toolkit could include just, how do you organize a local network and group to that kind of information, but also to, different kind of activations and lighter, quicker, cheaper things you can start to do and how to start to do that and point them to different existing resources. So that's definitely something we want to do. And I think we're hoping as we partner, some of that's already starting to happen in like Placemaking Europe and in other places. We want to try to take some of the best from these places and work together to figure out something that can help, more people.
Yeah, Europe has a good toolbox list, and then they keep it alive with the tool test days. So that's always about taking a tool out of the toolbox and giving people widespread usage of it. And we're definitely adopting and promoting that. I think so. Like we do, like my food group, we do food assistance right now. So like we'll get a call and it'll be like somebody, and they're like, I'm a 80-year-old Cambodian person with COVID in this area, and I need food. And so they went to our website to call me. And so I go to the website and I'm like, okay, so like, how did you, like, I go through it with them where they would have needed to go to get to the resource that I know is the best resource for them, which happens to be a Cambodian food drop, urban ag. They live in the, right in the right neighborhood for the right solution. They never would have found that thing because it wasn't organized to that. There's no way they would have thought with what they encountered how to navigate it to get to that piece of information. They needed to pick up the phone and call somebody. And that person had to know too, like exactly how to filter that. So there's a bit of like a concierge element to this, I think, where if somebody wants to design a food access for their neighborhood, they need to go through it probably with somebody rather than, it'd probably be difficult to design a solution online that they find right away, that presents them with the right information, and that, automatically.
Mhm. I like the direction Ethan was going in terms of trainings and workshops in the capacity building. That's a direction we were definitely exploring with the idea here in Vermont as well, and wondering how much we could move facilitation and technical support into first an online mode and then provide it in sort of a group setting that would then let groups go off and do steps on their own. If we get enough people signed up for this, Ryan, that might negate the need for that sort of thing. Maybe there'll be enough people to coach or help one-on-one in individual places. But around here, we're thinking, if communities need to go through some of the same steps in terms of building a team and taking a look at what projects they need to do and looking at possibilities, we could do that pretty easily in a Zoom format or a webinar format. And if we encouraged communities even to get a group together first, do the watch party model, and build in some interactive exercises, that could really move them through that process relatively quickly with a minimum of one-on-one support for some of them, at least. Some of them might need more. So I'm interested in that possibility and whether that might work nationally as well. It could be pretty widespread, or it could be done with a smaller cohort. I really like the class that Ryan and I are going through right now, and the chance to check in with the same people. It would be really cool if something like that was running over the course of a month or 6 weeks, and you got to check back in and get feedback on what you're working on and work through it with a set of peers too.
Is that what you're like, Ryan? Is that what you're thinking about in terms of iterating through this?
I really like that idea of like a cohort and, maybe like we partner with some foundations or a foundation in every state, and invite them to this group and then run through a process similar to like what Rebecca said. We basically went through a 3-day course, which is a fast version of a 6-month course, to do this exact type of work. And the people that we're in the class with they've never heard of placemaking, or maybe they've done one thing. They're very community level people. So that and then they're doing planning, and then typically they would do a project or move on from there. So that seems to be a viable thing. Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah,
So
I
are
did.
you recommending, like, Monica, would we come to you and say, Monica, you're a placemaker, we know you're in Michigan, we want to organize, make sure like communities who don't have access to these type of services or ideas can have the opportunity to go through a process where they can become familiar, connect with their neighbors, do it lighter, quicker, cheaper, with the hopes of something permanent that solves problems in their community, uh, that you would be able to start that ecosystem better than the local community foundation or whoever, the community development director or whatever, that those different types of people.
So, so I have an idea building off a couple of things you guys just said. First of all, you also just reminded me of Monica, I went to the place game exercise in Dearborn, Michigan. We were doing it with the mayor and I think the police department. I think it might be like a chief of police or maybe yeah, the chief of police was with us doing the place game, and a police car pulls up and told us to no longer that we should stop. That it's not safe to be on the streets. And yeah, but I think another audience to do. Yeah, I think we should do a sort of launch this with and build it with would be a cohort of foundations or philanthropists that are and other funders maybe too, government or other groups that are they're trying to so we both could sell to them but also engage them in shaping this program. And I had and a lot of the foundations are in Michigan. Frankly, most of our foundation contacts are there and Southeast Michigan certainly. So your role in grounding it, maybe even using some examples locally would be really useful. But I had a call yesterday with a woman that is in charge of placemaking at the Jesse Ball DuPont Foundation in Jacksonville, Florida. But they fund Jacksonville and a few other places, Wilmington, Delaware, and some others. But she was saying she really needs a network. All the solutions we've been talking about with the Placemaking US webinars have been super useful to her. But she really needs a network of other funders that are trying to figure out how to do this. So Rebecca, I'm reminded of the Community Matters Network and the funders that foundation behind it, and get Norton involved too. Maybe I don't know. But there's we could. It doesn't have to be a big group, but even if we got 5 or 10 philanthropists or people in that field to discuss this with us. But again, in a sort of public way, it sort of forces us to be a little ready, but also we can still be vulnerable and say, help us shape this. And how can placemaking help recovery is basically the question. How does community foundations, other foundations support that?
Yeah.
You'll get lots of invitation, and just by throwing this out there. This is the placemaking way that Ryan's amplified so much is just to do things, and it's not perfect, but you learn. You just throw it up on the website.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, just looking specifically at the case, Ryan, you described to them how you had a woman who wrote in Alexis from Brooklyn, New York. Well, it's interesting to me because Ryan, when I know Ryan talked to me and he was just like, okay, so at this point, this woman is right in her own backyard. Her passion is for her backyard, and she already has a merchant institution or merchant association that's willing to help fund this connectivity that she would love to work with. And then who in the area? And I remember I just went online and was looking up kind of like the park specific that she said she wanted this business corridor to connect to. And then I saw that there was a group, which reminded me of a group I know of in Anaheim called the Anaheim Bros. But this is like 5 million men or something. And it's a network of young men who work with mentors to actually do civics in their community. And they have that as civics as one of their main areas. And I think that that's it's project based. So it's very powerful because the youth will be able to actually learn how to be producers of space in this process with someone who is a placemaker. And I feel like that's a direct connect if you can get to the right person. And I've done a lot of that kind of connecting in my own city. I have an architecture firm working on greenways with students right now in a school that actually we helped create through the XQ challenge. So there's these ways to create these kind of amazing community pipelines. And I know that there's tons of groups that are always working, but I think that finding groups that are looking at projects like civics projects, project-based, that can really help with some of the things that you were describing in terms of the government shutting down, what's being done, et cetera. and it not having that snowball effect that it should be having, where people are like, oh, wow, I can transform this. Now, what else is there that in our community that we could see, that we could beautify, or that we could add to? Anyway, I just wanted to say I'm really interested in that part of this, if that connection to people on the street who are already doing this work, but may not have like a professional that can come in and work with them.
Right. And then what we're learning is, so like when those restaurants popped out in our downtown, like some of them had very poor frontage, and now they have these big patios and people see that they're there and their business is better than ever, even with COVID, because once you're doing something in the street, it becomes an advertisement for that activity and it attracts a lot of attention. And so I think part of this might be an offline component, and also a way that it could be initiated is like maybe people could go out and just tag places like this place matters, or let's make this place, and they could just throw out like a sticker with a QR code at an intersection or something, and that way these places could all get registered. So as much as it's now 10 people are walking by that a day who maybe care, they get coordinated around that node. In the city repair activity, I was playing with this concept too, to see how do we bring this digital matchmaking concept into that intersection as a model of every intersection in America, every residential neighborhood or intersection in America. And you can see like we created a literal infrastructure for this in the neighborhood level footprint. So like on one corner it says space, and on the corner you walk across to it says place, and there's a poetry box with the placemaking declaration and the QR code connecting this intersection's work to online hub, and then the literal steps that are going to be taken to placeify the place, which I think Lakeman has like some really simple, good neighborhood level stuff.
I've never heard that word before, placeify.
Could be chalked on to the intersection. So now, like, and I showed Madeline this, like we rolled up on an intersection. I'm like, look, what if it's in space here on the floor? And what if the steps were chalked in and then it said place? I mean, and there's this document, you can't literally not understand that there's it's almost like a community construction site, right? Like you walk by a construction site and it's like, okay, this place is going to have alcohol. It's going to have a big building. There are going to be yuppies in it. You have nothing to do with it but wait until it's there. With this is like you're in the grid, and the community is now going to be taking over and cohabitating, co-planning this space. And these are the processes we're going to take. You literally walking across the street, embodying it. I mean, this is like just really rough fun, but this could be prototyped, or like the Terminator, how like when you look around at stuff, he'd have an overlay. So you put an overlay on the ground, that's like this bit of real world data that connects to that ability for people to congregate and connect around this place and do work.
You had a more dynamic breakout group than I did, Ryan.
Well, it was funny too, because this lady, there were many of us. Basically, the idea behind this is we're each working on our intersection, but we were doing it all on the same intersection. So this lady over here put this kids gazebo natural structure because she wanted the moms to gather by this so they could plan and the community come together to plan this operation. This is a military invasion of a intersection for community purposes. I mean, it's war. It's a war-based setup.
It's interesting because the very first time I met Ryan, he actually was in a room talking about artist guilds and he had a digital infrastructure, like an architecture, a digital architecture for how we would help community to come back into these guild forms. And it was interesting because I remember looking around the room and seeing all of these people, like there were people who were very tech savvy, and then there were people who were not tech savvy at all, and they didn't understand. And afterwards, people had mentioned, I remember the head of a university was there, and he's like, this all sounds great, but I don't know how it works, you know? And I remember at that moment, I'm like, okay, what we need to do is create a bridge between this digital architecture and what is happening on the street. And to me, what we ended up doing was creating an artist registry where the community actually built the registry themselves. And so now there's like we have one of the biggest registries of all of our artists that are able to get jobs now within the community, and they don't have to go outside to find them. And this reminds me a lot of that because he's in a moment, I feel that Ryan is in a moment again where he's seeing the digital architecture of how we can connect placemakers from everywhere to communities, but now we actually have to figure out how to get the communities connected with the placemakers, so that there has to be some kind of a process, and it has to be the right people in community, not like institutions that are gonna, I mean, it's funny because the nonprofit industrial complex is very interesting to me in communities, and the way that they have groups doing things a lot of times isn't necessarily what the community itself wants for itself. So they don't, the community process doesn't get to be an organic process. It actually ends up being something that's sort of being dictated by funding or something else in another way. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're trying to, I love that all those ideas. We're trying to, placemaking disrupts the nonprofit industrial complex, whatever you called it. It goes with ever leadership. It celebrates the leadership, but it realizes that leadership is going to work better when it's multi-sector, multi-discipline, diverse. It's in every way, and no one person group dominates it in any way. So that's increases the publicness essentially. So we have to do that at every scale. So that we don't want to let any. We want to support anyone that wants to take ownership over this, but we want to support them doing it in a way that doesn't block other ownership. So it's not just going to the CDCs, or the foundations, or the landscape architects, or artists, or any. None of those groups should dominate, but they should all want to compete to be part of this in a sense, and on a community level and nationally. You also made me think that how do we start to engage youth and the sort of the guild idea is sort of was a form of education, and there was the apprenticeships that were around that, and as education systems need to be disrupted because they're too expensive and not that effective, and people can't go to school right now. How can downtown's main streets provide skill building training and get help, low cost help from young people to improve their main streets and local economies and keep young people in downtowns and rural areas? And how does this also create a network of those people as part of the ecosystem? Yeah. So anyway, we should probably wrap up, but what would be some next steps? Do we want to plan an event a couple of weeks out? We're on this treadmill of them, but they're going well.
I mean, let's keep iterating through it. I think like what you just said, like maybe James Rojas could plan a national day where we get as many cities as we can to follow through along on a web activity and do that. Because like what Madeline was just bringing up, like that's kind of what we did is we have to connect the physical and the digital. Like the webinars are cool, but like it would be really cool to connect the physical. This thing that we did, we had every 300 artists come into this building, and we had a 14-foot map of the city, and we had them lay out where they work, where they live, where they learn, where they practice. So they had this representation of a 3D heat map. And then they went up the stairs, and there were 14 computers with the website of how we were trying to represent that space online. And we got them all to interact with it and give feedback and information as to how that the digital and non-digital related for connecting art and the art economy for this place. And then it resulted in the third and fourth floor, we actually live scanned everybody into the system, and it became this digital registry, like she said, so that like when I get the email that says, hey, there's a $20,000 for a muralist, I can just grab all the muralists in town and ship that off to that person. And so there's an incredible amount of efficiency in connecting opportunity with, you know, real community-based artists in this case. So we're very interested in connecting the real with the online, connecting the technical talent with the communities who need it, who aren't being spoken to. And I think you guys have all brought up really great aspects and points of this, and just keep moving it forward. So I'll probably reach out to you guys. Oh, and Monica has something she wants to summarize. Totally. Parking day I see as like that. Those are like a tool test day where many groups have a low and easy entryway into experimenting with placemaking, and we all know the placemaking process is the most valuable part of placemaking. So that's totally something supported.
Yeah.
But I think you bring up a good point. It's kind of like everything we do is this, so it isn't like something new in a sense. Um, but I guess it's just opening it up, moving it more forward. And
But it's not only that, Ryan, because this actually really does require sort of like the theory of change or the vision that you have, so that you can see every step in the process, and so that we know what those steps are. Because once we can see the vision, it's way easier for us to start to put things, like, for things to fall into place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is taking it's taking the movement further on every scale. And actually, and Parking Day is one of these things that got people, ran people onto the movement and the attention. But I do think, the politics is that it's gone on for 10 years. It needs to, the sort of the evolution is that it's how do we make these things last, how bigger impacts. Otherwise, we're just perpetuating the status quo by, just doing a one-off event without a larger vision or systemic change, plan. So yeah, this is creating a core. It's moving beyond just a bunch of competing consultants and competing, one-off solutions. It's looking at things more, more integrated ways as a solution set for downtowns. And really realizing Placemaking's vision that most of the expertise is local. It is about the process. It's building that capacity. And I think we can get a bunch of foundations to start being interested in this. And then I actually think we could get this to be, I'm not so excited about like politics, but I think we actually could get this to be a part of like, the like Biden's platform, or maybe better than that, just be ready for it to be adopted by like mid-level administration people that go into a Biden administration. And we can get the right people. We know people that are in his campaign or other, or that will get those jobs, at different agencies. So if we're ready, if we grow this a little bit, so it has a little bit of a presence and a brand and some testing, and by the timing there could be to get it to really be scaled with foundations and or the government. That's how Art Place was started by the NEA and like 11 foundations or something like that. We could get something like that to happen.
Sounds really powerful.
Yeah.
We'll probably be running before then because the regulations with the cities are changing right now, and right now they're talking about keeping all the temporary projects up through September. But yeah, let's reconnect on parking day. Definitely think parking day is what became parklets, which obviously those are like the precedent of a lot of what's happening now. So it's an absolute, just like the porch thing. It's a great way for communities to jump in at scale. But I know some of you guys have to jump off for a 2:30, so
Yeah,
I'll be in touch with you guys. Thank you so much for your help and us
Thanks for
coming together with this.
making this happen.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Great conversation.
Thanks, thanks, Monica, for being part of this. Really, really good. Let's look
Thank
forward
you.
Yeah.
to
See you later.
building on this.
Thank you. I look forward to helping.
Yeah. And